Anse, tutemanawak, Wilfred Buck ni Tisigasan, Opaskwayak ni Noche. I'm also called Poami Negatichigao, the Dream Keeper. And we give people the opportunity to view the night sky and hear the traditional tellings from an Indigenous perspective, rather than a Roman Greek astronomy or mythology. We're told that every culture under the sky have their own perspective about the sky, their own teachings, their own names, their own constellations. We have people that come here every year and come and learn and come and sweat. And because initial what we do is we have a sweat and we have a pipe ceremony and then we have a feast after that. And then after that, when it gets dark, we look at the night sky. And we use a laser pointer. Usually just go stand out in the field with a laser pointer and start talking about the stars. I remember when I was young and growing up in Opaskwayak, laying outside on the banks of the Saskatchewan River looking up at the night sky and seeing the endless stars. And of course, just like everybody that has the chance to do that, they start wondering and they start asking themselves questions. And that image stayed in my head for the longest time. And then I heard this story. I was probably about 16, 17. And I heard this story from an elder named Murdo Scribe from Tipi, which is Norway House. And he talked about the Big Dipper. He told a story about the Big Dipper from a Cree perspective. It wasn't from a Roman Greek mythology, it was from a Cree perspective. And I thought that was very amazing, and that stuck with me, that stuck in my head, because I could identify with that, and I could identify with the story that he was saying. And then it wasn't until later on that I went to university, and I got my B.Ed and my post-bac, and I was teaching at Children of Earth High School. And one of the jobs I was given, I was mandated to put First Nations perspective in sciences, and basically in everything that I taught. And so I was one of the first teachers at Children of Earth High School back in 1991. And I did that for about 6-7 years. And then when I came back here, I taught with the South Winnipeg Technical College. And I was teaching land-based teachings to at-risk youth. There was about 20 at-risk youth. They were court mandated to come to my class. Age ranged from 9 years old to 8 to 17. And they were anywhere from grade 3 to grade 9. And they were all lumped together in one classroom. And they all had behavioral issues. They all had inhalant issues. They all had drug abuse issues and pretty much mental issues. And so I had them, all these kids in one class, and I did land-based teaching with them. We had a sweat lodge available right outside my classroom, and so that's what I pretty much focused on, was that land-based teaching and the sweat lodge. I'd get them in the classroom for about maybe an hour a day, then we'd go out and we'd do everything else, and they really liked that. The best time they liked was in the wintertime, where we go take snowshoes, we'd go out in the bush, find a place, make a fire, and drink tea and talk, and they were just calm, and they really got a lot out of that. Some of them so much so that when it was their time to go back home, they committed another crime just so they could stay, because they knew if they went back home, nothing had changed back home. Our elders always told us that one of the things we should try to do is every year we should try to fast. We should try to disconnect from that world out there, and we should try to reconnect to that spirit that's out here. And that'll slow us down, that'll clarify our thinking processes. The depth of knowledge that all Indigenous people have, and it saved my life. When I was young, I got lost in the bush. I was 13 years old and I got lost in the bush. And if anybody has ever gotten lost in the bush, one of the first things you do is you panic. And I'm talking seriously panic. You have just like a mental breakdown. And you sweat and you start screaming and you don't know where you are. And if you don't stop and calm yourself down, you start running. Doesn't matter where you don't know where you are, you just run. And I realized I was lost in the bush, and then I started to panic and I started sweating. And I was looking around. I didn't know, because I didn't know where I came from or where I was going. And I didn't know which direction was which. And so I was going to start running. Then I remember this phrase that some of the older people and our uncles gave us. He says, whenever you go out in the bush, you take a lunch with you. He said, take a piece of bannock, a bologna, whatever. Take it with you, because you can't rely on you getting something out there, and it'll help you. So I was sitting there, and I was just ready to take off, and I remember I had this lunch, and this little voice in my head said, don't panic, have some bannock. I stopped, I calmed down, I sat down, I ate some bannock, and then I said, okay, I can do this. And I looked at the sun, So I took a stick and I stuck it in the ground, and I watched that shadow of that stick, and right at the end of that shadow, I stuck another stick. And then I sat there for about 15 minutes, then I looked and I watched that shadow moving. And when I watched that shadow moving, I knew which way the sun was going. So I knew which way was east, I knew which way was west, and I knew how I could get out of where I was. And so just because calm down and realizing your orientation. So I was sitting there because one of the things they always told me is whenever you go somewhere, make sure you have a mental image in your head of where you are. Make sure you have an image, say there's a river to your south. Remember that in your head. And so that's what happened. That's what I did. I knew that the Saskatchewan River was to the south of me. I knew that the number 10 highway was to the west of me. And I knew that to the north of me there were CN railroad tracks. And I knew to the east of me there was nothing but bush for 100 kilometers. And so I knew where I was, so I knew what I had to do to get out of there. And so I walked straight south and I hit that river. And once I hit that river, I just had to go upriver, and there was Opaskwayak. So that was just through orienteering. I left my aunt and uncle's place. My uncle was a French Canadian, and he always used to beat the hell out of my auntie. And my auntie, she got fed up with it and she left. And I was probably about maybe 8 years old when she left. And so I stayed with that guy. And he'd beat me, and he'd drink with us. He'd buy booze for us, me and my partners. And that's how I lived for about 4 years. And then finally, when I was 12, I got sent to the store one Sunday night in September. He said, go to the store and get me some cigarettes. So I said, okay. So I went to the store, and I was standing there, and I said, you know, who the fuck would miss me if I left? Nobody would give a shit. And so I just walked. I kept walking, and I never went back. I lived down the streets from when I was 12 till I was about 18. I hitchhiked to Vancouver, lived on those streets, all the skid rows all across, right from Thunder Bay all the way to Vancouver. I lived in all those skid rows. I lived that kind of life. I was into drugs, I was into alcohol, I was into crime, I was into violence. I was into all that stuff. And then they called me back to the lodge, so I went back to the ceremony. And that's what saved my life, is that ceremony and those teachings of our people. And then from there, I had this dream, and in the dream, they showed one of the gifted young people. They showed me about who I was, what my name was. And with that name came responsibility. The name I was given was Poami Negatetichigo, the dream keeper. And the responsibility I had was to share the dreams with the youth, to share the vision with the youth, to share the hope with the youth. That was the responsibility I was given with that name. And so it just so happened that I ended up in the University of Manitoba doing a Bachelor of Education degree and a post-bac. And I've been working with youth. And that's how I got to learn about the stars. Those Achagosak, they're who we are. In our understanding of reality, we are Atagak, we are spirit. And in Cree there's a name, they say Kishikuogak, and it means being of energy, beings of light. And that's what we are. When they look at that sky and you say Tanse Kishikao, you're talking about how is the day. So Kishikao, it means the light of day. It means that energy that's out there right now. So Kishikugak is that light, being of energy. And that's what we are. Creator had a thought. And when Creator had a thought about us, we came into being as Kishikugak, as beings of energy. And then we roamed the cosmos. And we are looking for new experiences. And one of the places we come to visit, Mutashki, this place here. We come and visit here. And when we come here, we take a physical form. And then we learn what we learn, we teach what we teach, we experience what we experience, and then when we're finished, we revert back to energy and we go back up and continue our journey. And we come from a place up there in the sky called Pagwangishik, the hole in the sky. And when they're talking about a hole in the sky, they're talking about a spatial anomaly. They're talking about a wormhole. They're talking about alternate realities. That's the depth of knowledge our people have. That's the depth of knowledge that the understandings, our knowledge. That's the depth of knowledge that is suppressed with the genocide that happened to our people, with the oppression, with the colonization that happened to our people. They suppressed that knowledge from us, from these young people. And they made them feel ashamed of who they were. And they made them feel that their people didn't know nothing. They were simple. But this depth of knowledge is up there. And they're talking about alternate realities. And when they're talking about we are beings of energy, we come here to this place and take a physical form, and then we revert back to energy when we finish here. They're talking about particle theory. They're talking about energy changing form and going back, reverting back. They're talking about quantum theory, because that hole in the sky is a different reality. And when we dream, we get glimpses of that hole in the sky, because we're constantly dreaming when we sleep. Doesn't matter if we remember those dreams or not. Once we sleep, we dream. And that dream connects us to that hole in the sky. And it flashes possibilities, this infinite number of possibilities that we see, we experience. And sometimes we're sitting here and all of a sudden, hey, I saw this before. Or, hey, I've been here before. Oh, I know what's going to happen next. Of course you do, because you dreamt about it. That hole in the sky showed you a little picture of that place, that time, at that exact second. And again, that's the depth of knowledge our people have. And that's how we're connected. We come from that place and we go back to that place. Our elders tell us when we're in that lodge, Matut stand there, they tell us we are spirits learning how to be human. We're not human learning how to be spirits. We are spirits learning how to be human. And once we learn how to be human, we finish and we continue our journey. A lot of the stories have a similar beginning, and just the way that it's shared, it just adds to the knowledge that you already have, and expands that knowledge. We're told that again, we've been colonized to think a certain way. Prior to the coming of the Europeans, our people lived wherever they were. The concept of home is totally different concept from what we talk about home now. Well, it's not a little square box, little rectangular box somewhere on a piece of land somewhere. Home was wherever you were, because wherever you were, your people were with you. Your family was with you, your extended family with you. So wherever you looked, your family was around you. That was home. You looked up in the sky, you knew where you were. At all times you knew where you were, so you couldn't be lost. So therefore, wherever you were was home. So there was no territorial boundaries. Those territorial boundaries and those tribalistic understandings, they came with the mercantile system, with the trade. They came with the European thought processes. And then we started fighting amongst ourselves and we started killing each other. And we're still doing that. We have to stop doing that, because our elders told us that at one point it wasn't uncommon for our people to know 6, 7 languages. And just that simple statement tells you that people got along. People lived, they immersed themselves in other cultures, and they accumulated those cultural values, and they expanded their knowledge base. So that tells you that people lived with one another. They took the time to learn a language. So that's a totally different perspective from what the anthropologists and what the professors are telling us in school.